short comment. Ghalib Saab and Dr. Saab, and then you, sir. Ghalib Saab first.
Thank you, Lord Ahmed. My question is very simple. After the 1947, after the ceasefire and the promises made by the United Nations, the people of Jammu and Kashmir for 40 years, they have been trying to resolve the Kashmir issue through the peaceful means. Mr. Kaufman have gone through the history, and after the 1990, the people of Jammu and Kashmir have also tried the armed struggle. But after the 2008, the people of Jammu and Kashmir are also now going through a peaceful movement. Now, can this panel give us an option to the Kashmiri people? What is the option for them? Because of the dialogue between India and Pakistan are going from last many years, and there has been a dialogue for 430 times between India and Pakistan. But there is no result after resolving the Kashmir issue.
Thank you very much. And we'll take 3 questions at a time because then the panel can respond. Dr. Saab at the back.
I'd like to, first of all, thank you very much. This is great debate. Can I ask Lord Nazir, the wounds turn into scars, painful scars. There may be a very great solution on the table, but what about those scars which are visible, loud and clear? Do you have any solution to the people? There's a long list of martyrs. Where would their relatives go? We have to provide them some solution which can keep them quiet, keep them happy, keep them satisfied, and make it worthwhile. And I also respectfully disagree with the Honourable MP. The vested interest of the governments who are trying to resolve the issue of Kashmir have to be taken away. The countries who are selling arms to India, they cannot be party to resolving the issue. They put the burden on UN. You go and resolve that. Because they have vested interest in the Kashmir issue. I'm sorry to be blunt here. This is how I feel about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chaudhry Azim Saab.
Thank you very much, Lord. I'm proud of you. You are here. And I'm so proud of Lord.
Oh, everybody, proud of everybody.
That's what I give in us.
Thank you.
We'll take, the brother said, if Pakistan fully, if they can have a demonstration about a judge in Pakistan when the Nawaz Sharif was working on the flooding, if that all Pakistan government has a wakil, Asiyat, and then demonstration because the government of Azad Kashmir always said Allah ke Pakistan, and the Jammu and Kashmir people said Allah ke Pakistan, what else they wanted?
Thank you, sir. We'll answer that. Thank you so much. First of all, I'll ask Steve because Steve Baker has been mentioned, so give him the opportunity and then we'll ask the other panelists to answer the questions.
That all nations bear their scars. All nations bear their scars. We've all, well, sooner or later you look back through our histories and every nation has its disputes between peoples of different faiths or ethnicities and so on. And we always must find a way to forgive and to move forward. And that forgiveness is an extremely high barrier, but it must be that in terms of scars, people must find a way to move forward. I think the hope for the Kashmiri people is in the knowledge that they're not forgotten. Here we are today. I'm extremely grateful to the High Commissioner and to everybody else to have this opportunity to be here. We had our debate in Parliament. That is the highest chamber in this land, with respect to their noble lords. But the Parliament is the highest assembly in the land for giving voice to these concerns. The people are not forgotten, and there are those of us with a sincere wish that we should not be sitting here in another 60 years having the same conversation. We should not be having the same conversation. We should be moving forward. But to answer your point, sir, directly, about vested interests, I think you're absolutely right to bring up the subject of vested interests, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk about it. I think we're stuck in this flawed and fallen world with political power. I think political power is absolutely necessary to defend life, liberty and property and people's rights. But there's always been a problem in all of human history that people will insist on turning to the political means to obtain their prosperity. And that we all of us have two choices, either to obtain our prosperity by force of arms or by force generally, or to use the economic means. And the economic means is difficult and time-consuming and risky. But the economic means is the just means to our prosperity. So I think you open up a very important and wide-ranging problem that actually everybody has vested interests. Everybody has vested interests, and everybody has a nation that they wish to whose cause they wish to advance. And I think it is the job of the United Nations, and it's the job of statesmen, and I do say statesmen deliberately. It's one thing to be a politician and another to be a statesman, but it's a job of statesmen to be principled and show a higher standard of leadership, a leadership based on values, not expediency. And if people can be persuaded, if politicians can be found who will assert values, principles, and insist that we must all live and find our prosperity through the peaceful and economic means, not by recourse to the political means, if such people can be found, then perhaps the United Nations can operate in a way above vested interests and we can make progress. But I think, sir, you make a very relevant point. I think it's one of the most difficult points, frankly, in all of human existence. But nevertheless, flawed as our institutions are, I think we must press on and attempt to use the UN. But very happy to discuss it later.
Thank you. You've answered 2 questions. There's one more if anybody wants to answer, but I've got lots of other questions, so you can have the opportunity. The other question was in relation to people marching for the restoration of a judge, and why can't they march for Kashmir? I think that's what he meant. Right, that's he's clapping, because I got the question, you see. But anyway, we'll answer that in a few minutes.
The account presented here is superb, really very informative, and all 4 people that have been said things that I think very relevant and important. But I think it's not a cliche, it's a fact, right? I mean, you're only as good as the people you've got, and I think, you know, the information that I think needs to be passed on to people is, what are we doing? The United Nations is not a toothless arm. I mean, you've got a people, you've got a permanent number of who are there serving the world community, and if they are to be relied on to make decisions, then they should really be persuaded, and I think we in this country have a major role to play that, to make things happen. And if there are others who are not really doing it, then I think it's incumbent on us, our government here, to do something about it. Now, when it comes to like Falkland or anywhere else in the part of the world, then you've got some situation where things are suddenly brought up higher in the agenda, and because we just so happen we don't have oil there, or we don't have any minerals there, so to speak of, or other things, or we are not perhaps strategically important place geographically in that part of the world, we are given not a particularly attention that I think ought to be given. And I think, you know, this country has a big part to play because of the legacy and other issues of those kind. And I respect, you know, it's kind of difficult for perhaps Britain in the present demand state that they are in to make significant impact. But I mean, you know, there are other places in the Middle East, and you know, Argentina is not too far away, and we can pressurize them to keep off Falkland, etc. Then I think we can do something about resolve the issue of Kashmir, and do so quickly. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And just, Mr. Mayor, just to remind you that Falklands. Sorry?
I'm not a political guy.
No, I know. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to remind you that Falklands is part of our country, so we have to defend it. So a little bit different. Councillor Liaquat Sahab.
Thank you, and I'm listening to the debate, excellent debate, having seminar and eloquent speakers here. And obviously the Kashmir issue is the oldest issue on the United Nations table, and it's really important that is solved, and the only way to solve that is to make sure that is on the table and not forgotten. And it's really important that our government here plays a big part in it, because the United Nations doesn't run on its own. It is important that the government is part of that, putting pressure on that. And as everybody knows, India is, you know, human rights violation, really terrible, and yet we're talking about, you know, having them on the front seat of the United Nations. And so all of these are really sort of important for that, especially region, because it's costing us billions of pounds, and there won't be peace without Kashmir issue being resolved on that basis. But to resolve that, it's really important to be mindful of the Kashmiri people and all, and they play a big part in it to get that resolved.
Thank you very much. To my understanding, there have been 2 comments, not questions. So, Dave Anderson, please.
Thanks very much, Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner, for inviting me here. Steve mentioned about the situation in Northern Ireland. The Northern Ireland situation really only started moving forward when a third party was allowed to be involved. That third party was Bill Clinton. I think we can see quite clearly today that isn't what happened from the States. But we really do need, we've got the third party, it's enshrined in their charters, it's so eloquently said. Can I ask my comrades from Parliament, from across the parliamentary divide, what are we doing? Have we got a plan within the ABPG or elsewhere for us to start putting pressure, first on our government, then on other governments, but particularly on the United Nations? Because as Steve rightly said, we are the highest body in this country in terms of the democratic process. If we don't make the case, nobody else will.
I'll just make three very quick responses. I think Dave's absolutely right, and I think we should be acting together and moving forwards. And in terms of what I'm doing next, I'm very grateful to Councillor Mahbub Hussain Abati, who's been very generous in all of his support to me, and it's been a huge pleasure always to work with him. And he and I are going together with a few others to Kashmir in April. I'm very much looking forward to it, having not been there before. So I'm delighted to say I'm going to Kashmir. And when I come back, obviously I'll write letters to ministers based on what I've seen and the discussions we've had today, and I look forward to doing that. So I think we do have to ask the British government to give greater voice to citizens' concerns, and I think actually the British government can fairly represent British people of Kashmiri, Indian and Pakistani descent and represent them all on this issue. It's in all of their interests that it should be resolved. But what I don't want to do is give you unrealistic expectations. One of the reasons I came into politics was I was so fed up with how politicians were doing it, I thought I'd do it myself. So what I don't want to do is make grand promises and enter into some huge grandstanding to raise your expectations. We need to be realistic, and it's my intention to visit, to come back and to put pressure on the government. Just one final point, very briefly. I do think it would be wrong for India to have a permanent seat on the Security Council without real concrete progress.
Thank you very much. One of our sisters whose men have had their go, I'll come back to you. One of our sisters, councillor from Luton, moved a resolution in Luton Council.
Two questions actually. First question is, we see various forms of media here, but it's mostly always actually South Asian media that comes to these sort of events. But my question is, why don't we ever invite the BBC to come over here? Because that's more like the international media, where the Western people will actually see this issue. I mean, it's the third or fourth generation of British Kashmiris being born and bred up in England. And I only know about this issue through my parents or through my visits to Pakistan or through my husband. But I mean, the children, the youth of today, I don't think many of them know about this issue. If I talk to my colleagues, my Western colleagues, they've not even heard about the Kashmir issue. So I think there's a weakness there. So I think the international media, the Western media, definitely should be invited to these presentations, seminars, etc. And my other point is, we should all be singing the same tune. If you see, we're obviously Kashmiris, Pakistanis together. We're raising this issue on every platform that we can see. Thank you to Steve Baker personally. I'd like to thank you. We were in the gallery watching you that day, and you did an excellent job there. We had our local MPs, Gavin Shukar and Kelvin Hopkins there as well, and Lord Kaban Hussain was there as well. But my question is, we're giving India the MFN, like most favourite nations. Isn't that weakening the Kashmir issue? We should be giving them the MBN, which is the most violations nation, I think, in the world. You know, it's not being raised as that. So they're basically, it's just a biased attitude from the world that we're getting, and definitely we should involve the West.
Thank you very much for that. Randhawa Saab, former President of the Pakistan UK Chamber of Commerce.
As Mr. Kaufman said, Pakistan has done everything humanly possible to resolve this issue, and which is very clear. And as my honourable friend Steve said, we need to apply international and universal principles. The question is, have we applied all those universal principles to solve this problem? If we haven't, is there any principle which is left? And if we have applied all of them, are they ineffective? I would like to ask what's the next step going forward.
Thank you. And there's a young man just next to you at the front. Yeah.
As part of the youth which is present over here, I would just like to emphasize that first of all, it's very educated that you briefed us all on this. And the only comment I would like to make is that we would want to appreciate your efforts and we would want to take this forward. And Kashmir court should not be a dead end for anybody, because the youth of Pakistan look at it as their own cause, and we are with our brethren for this cause. Inshallah, we will take it forward from you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This young man next to you, I'll take him as well, and then we'll. Yeah.
Okay, assalamu alaikum everyone. There's been a lot of talk about the United Nations today, and we've been asked to have faith in the United Nations resolutions and wait for the United Nations to come up with a solution for Kashmir. But deep down, we all know, deep down every one of us knows that it's not actually the United Nations that runs the world, it's Goldman Sachs and Shell Oil that runs the world. And so the United Nations, an organization that can allow the recent slaughter and brutality in Syria, okay? The United Nations is an organization which can allow a Jewish state being carved into the Palestinian homeland.
Can we not go into that, because we're talking about Kashmir and we really want to stay, I'm very grateful. Question on Kashmir I'll take, but otherwise I'll
question on Kashmir, I'm leading on to it.
Okay.
The United Nations, we've been asked to put faith in the United Nations, but we know the United Nations in fact doesn't have a lot of power. So what I want to ask the Liberal Democrat MP is that why don't we finally admit the United Nations will be unable to solve the issue effectively.
Thank you. You've asked questions. There are two more people that I really need to take comments, and then I'm going to end. I'm afraid time is getting on and there's a vote in the Parliament as well at 7 o'clock. And so, Councillor Bhatti.
Thank you, Lord Sir, for this opportunity. Can I first of all take the opportunity of thanking Pakistan High Commission for having this seminar at Pakistan High Commission on Solidarity Day on Kashmir, which is I'm grateful and thankful to you. And I thought we're going to carry on more on this similar line. I also like to thank all the panel, which they made a very valuable contribution to the debate. And I would like to thank Karwan Sahab for the work he has done, raising a point and question at the House of Lords. Also Lord Nazir Sahab for the work he has done on the Kashmir AG, All Party Community Group, and also raising it at the House of Lords. And I'm thankful to Steve Baker for something that the Kashmir is waiting for a number of years, for about 60 years, that we could not achieve, which Steve have achieved it within 2 years, having a debate, leading a debate in House of Commons, first time ever in the history of Great Britain. I'm thankful to you, Steve, work you have done. My other question is that I am working with James Alias, who is the chairman of All Party Kashmiri Group in Brussels, had so many meetings. He went with me when I was mayor of High Wycombe in 2000, and he set up an all-party Kashmiri group in Brussels. He done so many seminars and so much work and so many Emma Nicholson reports. Give me a minute, please. Look, I'm making a point. Let me speak. I'm speaking to Kashmiris, and they have a right to know what I'm saying. If you can just please take me. And the Emma Nicholson report, he have worked. I'm trying to tell what the people have done on Kashmir, and people got right to know what they have done. And Emma Nicholson report, he have made 474 amendments before that report went to the European Parliament. And I would like, my question is to what like it was said previously, that we have passed a resolution in the councils so many times. Now, Steve has made a history in Great Britain having a debate in House of Commons. I am trying to do a debate in the European Parliament. I just wonder, is it possible to have a debate in the House of Lords? Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can I just make a correction, because we are very grateful to Steve Baker for the debate he did in the House of Commons, but it was under new rules. There had been debates in the House of Commons in the past. So I think we really need to correct that, because it's not fair on people on Kashmir. Yes.
Questions, not debate. Not 3-hour debate. I don't think.
Well, okay. Well, it doesn't matter. There have been members of Parliament.
Can I just say, if anybody wants, these things are matters of public record.
Yes.
And there was a half-hour adjournment debate, I think, at one stage. But although these things are called adjournment debates, they typically consist of a statement read by a member
that's true, yeah,
and a response by the minister. So I don't think we need to be just balanced about this. Many people have worked extremely hard over a very long time, but I was very pleased to secure a debate on the floor.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much for that. Just a comment? Yes. Or question?
Question for Sanjaras. when we are talking about Jammu and Kashmir, do you think you are including the Gilgit and Baltistan also in it? The Gilgit and Baltistan. Yes, when we are talking about Jammu and Kashmir, you include the Gilgit and Baltistan included in it.
Sandra?
I'm aware of the resolutions that have failed at the UN regarding Kashmir. My question is very swift to each of the panelists. Why is it that we have success in East Timor and more recently in Sudan? Why not Kashmir? What's happened? What's gone wrong?
Thank you. Very last comment is Mayor of Maidenhead.
Just briefly, we've been talking to United Nations and Europe for the last 16 years. It hasn't really got us anywhere. Egypt went out and marched into Tahrir Square, and that's what got them talking. All three of you should not be encouraging our people to actually go out and march, and that's the only way the United Nations and Europe will actually take notice of us.
Well, thank you very much for those fascinating questions and contributions. I'm just going to ask the panel just to wind up the discussion, and I'll start from Lord Gurbanisane and then we'll go to the other side.
Thank you. A couple of things that I've got to say in response.
Now let me tell you, as much as I know, because I not only that I was born in Kashmir, but I also have friends living in Indian Kashmir, and I have contacts through many people like Nadeem Qureshi and others who tell us on a daily basis what is happening in Kashmir. There are marches being held. Hundreds of thousands of people have marched through the streets of Srinagar and other towns many times a year. The only problem is that the Western media does not get any information about it, or they deliberately don't want to report it. That is the problem. Now, what I want to say to the question, to the answer to the question that the Galipsa made earlier, what we can do, I think what we can do is in Kashmir, carry on with your peaceful campaign and get the media, particularly the Western media, involved. We, the West, needs your pictures of your human rights violations on the screens of our televisions in this country. And only when these pictures are shown on the television, on BBC, ITV and others, the British public will start taking notice, the British politicians will ultimately start taking notice, and so will the rest of the world. That is one. The other thing is that the UK diaspora here in this country, what we need to do is step up. Not that you're not doing, many of you are doing hard work over the years, and I know many faces in this hall who have been working very, very hard on the Kashmir issue for years and years. But let me say, please step up your campaign and gear it towards lobbying the British parliamentarians and engaging the British media, as Councillor Nasima, you said earlier on. We must get the media, particularly the British media, involved in our meetings, such as this and many others that are held all over the country. I know, for example, this is the fourth meeting in this week that I, myself and Lord Nazir and others and Sir Gerald Kaufman have attended to do the solidarity with Kashmiris throughout the country. Now, all I would say to you is that we need to, the biggest thing that you need to tell the world is the human rights violations that are taking place. They are the ones which are going to attract the attention of the world and the world.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. But I have to say, thank you to all the Pakistani media that actually attend these functions, because the BBC will not. Even if you ask them, they will not. So, you know, I mean, we've really got to say thank you to those people who do. And that's why I'm grateful to Steve Baker, and I'm grateful to all MPs who do a wonderful job. But, you know, we've got to try and get everybody and say, well, Gerald, final word, and then Steve, very final word.
First of all, briefly, Gilgit, there is no reason why it should not be included. The question is how we get the process going. Two things I want to say. One, the United Nations is only as strong as the determination that we put into it. Steve has rightly said that he and I voted for United Nations Security Council Resolution 1973 on Libya. I don't know about Steve, but I do not know if I would have voted for it if I had known how corrupted the implementation of that resolution was by the Western powers, not to save the people of Benghazi, but to bring about a regime change with the murder of the leader of Libya. So it's very much a question of how United Nations resolutions are implemented and the strength of the United Nations, which has obviously got no strength whatever in Syria and has got no strength whatever in Palestine, because otherwise things will be happening there, and they're not. Secondly, the media, and I speak as somebody who was a working journalist for 10 years before we went into the House of Commons, and is still a member of the National Union of Journalists. The media in this country have been trivialised to an unbelievable extent. People suffering terrible traumas and injuries and people being killed in Kashmir, in Palestine, in other places, are not as important to them as whether Chris Huhne committed a driving offence and whether the chief executive of the Royal Bank of Scotland got a bonus. The priorities of the media in this country are beyond contempt, and I say that as a journalist. And that being so, it is essential that we focus on these issues in a way that cannot be ignored. And the third point I make is this, and I make no apologies for making the point whatsoever. There are in this country between 1.25 million and 1.5 million voters of Pakistani, Bangladeshi origin. And those voters can make a difference in the constituencies in which they live. And it's about time that, regardless of political party, we focused to the government and to my own party on the fact that there are votes at stake here, because if they don't care about the principles, at least let them care about the votes.
Thank you very much. Steve, final word.
Well, thank you very much, and just once more, thank you all, because it's been a real privilege and pleasure to be here. As you know, this issue attracts genuine cross-party support, and I'm sure you've noticed that we've all been complimentary about one another, despite coming from different parties. But I just should say, for the record, for the gentleman who referred to me as a gentleman, I think referred to me as a Liberal Democrat MP, I am actually a Conservative MP. Yeah, I'm a Conservative. So the
coalition,
yeah. But yeah, the second point is, yes, Libya, I do share some of Sir Gerald's disappointment, but I don't wish to say anything further about it tonight. But I voted for the defence of a people and nothing more. In terms of the media, I think Sir Gerald's absolutely right about the agenda and the way it works. It's a terrifying thing to be in the public eye and before it. I think the right way to get into the media is to remind people that there are thousands of people in this country who care about this issue, and rightly so. And I think that if protest is lawful and peaceful, I think it's legitimate. But I must emphasise it must be lawful and peaceful, and indeed considerate if it's not going to be counterproductive. And with that in mind, I would just say that in all of this, as we make progress together, I would just make an appeal finally, not just to people here, but to people watching through the media, that whatever we do, it must be peaceful, lawful and principled. And I believe that one of those most important principles is this one, that each one of us, whoever we are, wherever we come from, whatever our origins, we are all morally, politically and legally equal to one another. And out of all of these principles is derived something which is absolutely relevant to Kashmir, absolutely relevant within the European Union, absolutely relevant as a universal principle, and that is political self-determination at the ballot box, such that political power has no other authority but the sovereign people. Thank you.
Kind of final sort of thank yous to everyone. Once again, the sister asked a question in relation to India being the most favourite state. Just on a closing note, I'm the most unfavoured person in Azad Kashmir, so that doesn't really matter. So thank you very much. Thank you, and where do we move, sir?
Can I make a comment?
Oh, of course, sir.
May I request all of you to raise your hands, people who are from Kashmir. Can you count them in this hall? How many Kashmiris are here on this 5th of Solidarity Day, the 5th of February?
Count.
You can't. Anyway, what I wanted to convey to you is that let's all resolve this day that next year on 5th of Feb, there should be at least 500,000 march in London in support of this. This is not your strength. Pakistan High Commission, Government of Pakistan, Pakistan has been to war thrice with India. We have sacrificed, we have been sacrificing. But the people, you know, you are 1.2 million people here. As Sir Gerald said about your voting rights, about your presence, you must make your presence felt here. You must come out in the street, peaceful demonstration, raise your voice, tell the people what is happening in Kashmir. This is not the way, just making speeches and discussing is not the way out of this. Thank you very much.
I think the problem actually for Kashmir's matter is been there for far too long, and we all member of the Commonwealth and also United Nations need to put their head together and resolve this issue. This has been a long outstanding matter, and it's a problem for all Kashmiris and Pakistani. Now, where we are is a volatile situation, and things could happen, frankly, and this is not good for anyone. And I think there are many pressing issues around the world, and Kashmir is one of them, and people have not paid any attention to that. And I think the matter needs to be escalated on the agenda, and we need to sort of find a solution to that. Now, this government, British government, has played a role in this to some degree, but I think they need to do work much harder and to make sure the solution is found. Unfortunately, we don't have oil in our part of the world, and so therefore it becomes less important in the eyes of many people. But nevertheless, I think we have many issues of human rights that I think are of significant concern to a whole variety of people. And unless, of course, we really pay attention, then I think matter is going to get worse. When you think about sort of situation in the Middle East right now. It's equally important that we have a human rights issue and people are focusing on that. But let's not forget that this matter of Kashmir has been on the world map on the agenda for good 60 years plus, right? And people really are very selective in their approach, and I think we need to really escalate that and find a solution to this pressingly.
कश्मीर इशू का जो हल है वो कश्मीरियों ने तय करना है, और कश्मीर के जो लोग हैं वो ही इसके कंक्लूजन के पहुंचेंगे कि उनको क्या चाहिए और कैसे वो कश्मीर को रखना चाहते हैं.
That's a very easy question to answer, isn't it? Well, if I had that answer, we wouldn't be sitting here today. But the truth is, the only resolution we have is by people talking together and learning from the past experience around the world, where we've seen the wrong way of doing things. The wrong way of doing things is let these things run and run and run. We need to get people together and realise that this is unfinished business that must be sorted as soon as possible.
I think it's really important that Kashmir issue needs to be resolved, and the only way to resolve it is to put pressure on United Nations and get that back on the table, because it's one of the oldest resolutions in the United Nations, and Western media plays a big part in that, and the Western society plays a big part. And I'm really sort of surprised if America, when Obama came along and he said Kashmir issue was one of the forefront that he was going to tackle, and yet that's not true now at the moment. So it's really important that needs to be solved because of the peace in that region, because of the billions of pounds that's been spent on that should be spent on other people that are going through poverty, through all of the hardship. And it's really important. That can only be resolved with the Kashmiri people involved in it, and the right of self-determination is very important for Kashmir.
People have got to rediscover their principles, and those principles are peace, prosperity. We've got to have equality before the law, freedom, good property rights, but above all these things, non-aggression. It is so important that people do not aggress against one another. So that's a fundamental basis on which liberties can be built, on prosperity can be built. It's so difficult for democracies. You see it in the United Kingdom as well as in India. It's so difficult for a democracy once people have turned to violence. So for me, the first thing is non-aggression. People should behave peacefully. That then gives a chance for self-determination at the ballot box, and therefore progress and a basis on which to build.
The solution of Kashmir is very simple. The people of Kashmir need to be given their birthright, the right of self-determination, which was promised by the United Nations in 1948. That needs to be given to them, as it has been given or granted to people of East Timor and Sudan and many other places. The Kashmiris are only waiting for their birthright to be given to them.
The only solution for Kashmir issue is the right of self-determination, promised by the United Nations Security Councils of 1948, 49 and many subsequent resolutions. Right of self-determination, free, fair and impartial plebiscite for the Kashmiri people.
The decision was up to the
I think it's very important. Listen, let us not, be very frank and honest about it. Kashmiri people have been living in this country for a very long period of time, and Pakistani people as well. And Kashmiri and Pakistani are all one, because we have so close ties with Pakistan, and Pakistan, without Pakistan, I think Kashmiri people would find it difficult. So really we need to work together, right? And I think people of Kashmir and Pakistan can play enormous part, and they are playing a significant part in getting the opinion mobilized and getting the member of parliaments and escalate the matter to the highest possible authorities and make sure that our voice is heard. Now, people aren't sometimes, doing that in a way that I think people can make them hear, and I think the British Member of Parliaments can play a big role. They have a moral responsibility and making sure that those Kashmiri who've been living here for a long time are listened to, and I think it's important that we do that, and I think it's going to benefit our people enormously, because even though we have been living in this country for many years, and we are proud resident of this country, we are British, we are Muslims, and we are Kashmiri people, but our roots are back home in Kashmir. We always think day in, day night about what's going on in our part of the world, and I think we will continue to do that. And I think it's important that we escalate this matter at the highest possible level.
मेरा ख्याल है हमारा जो बैरूनी मुल्क हम पाकिस्तानी है, हमारा ये इशू इतना ज़्यादा नहीं है जितना पाकिस्तान में बसने वाले लोगों का है, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान में बसने वाले पाकिस्तानी और हिंदुस्तान में बसने वाले हिंदुस्तानियों का ये बहुत हाइप्ड अप इशू है, जबकि हम जो बैरूनी मुल्क पाकिस्तानी और हिंदुस्तानी रहते हैं हमारे लिए इतना हाइप्ड अप नहीं है, चूँकि हम यहाँ इकट्ठे रहते हैं, इकट्ठे काम करते हैं, एक दूसरे से मिलते हैं, फैमिली रिलेशन है। तो मैं समझता हूँ कि जो हम बैरूनी मुल्क बसने वाले हिंदुस्तानी और पाकिस्तानी हैं वो दोनों इस मसले को कश्मीरियों की मर्जी के मुताबिक हल करने में बड़े मददगार साबित हो सकते हैं।
Well, I think clearly part of what we're doing is come to place to events like this today, so we can speak to people from the communities and say, look, we want to work together with you to resolve something that should never have happened in the first place. But clearly people like myself as politicians have a responsibility to lobby our own governments, but also to lobby the governments in your part of the world to say, look, it's time you got this resolved. It is not fair. It needs putting right. We also need to be quite clear. People like the United Nations must and should play a much bigger role than what they have so far.
We need to make people aware of it, and we need to get together to make sure that it's sorted out, because it's for the benefit of Pakistan, India and Kashmiris themselves on that basis. It is really important, because all the human rights violation that's going on in the India at the moment, and that needs to stop, because there needs to be peace in Kashmir region.
Well, the diaspora is extremely active. I think it's wonderful the work they do in Parliament. There's no doubt, if you're an MP with Kashmiri constituents, there's no doubt you'll be aware of the issue. I think what people will need to do, if we're going to move this issue forward in a really meaningful way, is make sure that the facts get presented and they're tangible as facts. Because it's too easy for people to think that things have perhaps been overstated. And we can't have that when things are as serious as they are, and they are undoubtedly of the gravest seriousness. We need to make sure we get facts onto the media, into the news, that they're authoritative and can be seen to be such. We need to make sure people are speaking to their MPs, get the profile up, but raise the profile in a moderate way, so that people can have a reason to believe that this is a serious issue, which it is, and make progress.
The Pakistan diaspora and Kashmir diaspora in Great Britain, they have a lot of influence over the politicians of this country, as they are voters. There are more than 1.2 million Kashmiris in Pakistan in the UK, and they need to influence their own members of parliament and convince them that they need to convince our own British government to take more action and get India to negotiate with Pakistan a solution which is according to the wishes of Kashmiri people.
Firstly, pressurize our own members of parliament and European members of parliament. Secondly, ask our own government to take this issue further, and also make lots of noise that the United Nations has a responsibility and they must do something about it.